right, welcome back to Almost Famous, Lost Heroes and Forgotten Legends, where we dig deep into the hidden corners of history, searching for the brilliant minds and groundbreaking contributions that somehow got, well, lost in the narrative. Today, we're peeling back the layers on a truly pivotal figure, a woman whose work quietly shaped the very digital world we live in, yet her name rarely graces the textbooks. We know history, right? But do we truly know her story?
Today we're going to talk about Klara Dán von Neumann. Now for many of you, that name might not immediately ring a bell. And if it doesn't, that's precisely why we're having this conversation. Because here's the astonishing claim, one that might just make you sit up a little straighter. Klara Dán von Neumann is credited with writing what many now regard as the world's first algorithm intended for a machine, the world's first modern computer program. Think about that for a moment. Every single piece of software, every app on your phone, every complex system running our modern world, they all, in a very real sense, descend from the code she penned more than 70 years ago. To my mind, that makes her arguably the most overlooked person in the entire history of computing. And her story, tragically, is a classic example of something historians call the Matilda Effect. If you've been with us for a while, you know we talk about this a lot. The Matilda Effect is that systematic, often insidious practice where women's groundbreaking work is consistently downplayed, frequently attributed to their male colleagues, or simply left unrecognized altogether. It's named after Matilda Joslyn Gage, a suffragist who way back in the 19th century was already protesting this very erasure of women's intellectual achievements. Our mission here at Almost Famous is to uncover this hidden knowledge, to explore those unanswered historical questions, and to celebrate those overlooked contributions. So, let's dive into Klara's world and shine a much-deserved light on her incredible legacy.
To truly grasp Klara's impact, we need to go back to the tumultuous era of World War II. This was a time of immense scientific and technological urgency. The American military especially had an urgent and overwhelming need for complex calculations, particularly for things like ballistics trajectories, figuring out where shells and rockets would land. This desperate need led to a fascinating phenomenon. Thousands of women were hired to serve as human computers. They were literally the computers before the electronic machines took over, hunched over mechanical calculators, churning out numbers. Among these human computers, a select group of women emerged as true pioneers. They became the 6 primary programmers of the ENIAC, that's the Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer. Their names were Betty Holberton, Kay McNulty, Marlon Westkoff, Ruth Lichterman, Betty Jean Jennings, and Fran Bilas. Now, don't let that term human computer mislead you. These women were far more than just glorified calculators. They were the ones who truly brought the ENIAC to life, developing methods to input programs, mastering its intricate inner workings, and astonishingly, they could even diagnose hardware issues right down to a single faulty vacuum tube. This, my friends, was the true birth of modern programming. It was an intellectually demanding job, requiring extensive preparation, deep understanding of the machine's logical diagrams, and configuring wires on a massive machine that stretched across a 50 by 30-foot room. And right in the thick of this, a key figure emerges. Klara Dán von Neumann. She wasn't just involved, she was integral. Klara was a self-taught computer scientist and engineer. She was a key figure in developing code for the ENIAC. In fact, she was designated as one of its first 3 programmers, along with her husband, John von Neumann. She even managed a staggering 100,000 punch cards for early weather forecasting on the machine, working tirelessly for 32 days to see through and check the final code. Her job was to translate complex mathematical instructions into a language the computer could understand, looking up codes that corresponded to specific machine instructions. This is where the term coder originates, marking the birth of the modern code paradigm. Her work was completely novel, a feat that had never been accomplished before. To give you a real sense of the caliber of these women, consider this anecdote from Jean Bartik, writing of the original ENIAC programmers. She once recounted how brilliant Betty Snyder Holberton was at debugging. Betty could find errors that stumped even the best. In fact, Grace Hopper, another absolute legend in computing, who developed the first compiler and co-developed COBOL, sought Betty's assistance to find a bug in her own compiler. Grace had been struggling for a while. Betty, borrowing Grace's compiler for just 3 days, found the issue. Grace Hopper, the pioneer, the admiral, called Betty Holberton the best programmer she ever saw in her life. That's the kind of genius we're talking about here. Now, for all their ingenuity and indispensable contributions, what kind of recognition did these women receive? Well, this is where the Matilda Effect truly casts its long, unjust shadow. The ENIAC, this revolutionary machine, was formally announced and dedicated to the public in February 1946. It was a monumental event, a press conference, a grand unveiling, yet the stark, infuriating truth is that none of the women who actually programmed the machine, who made it work, who even created the very demonstration programs shown to the public, were invited to the formal dedication or the celebratory dinner held afterwards. Their groundbreaking work, their tireless effort was simply not mentioned in the official accounts. It's a prime example of their status as invisible technicians. Klara's pivotal work, like that of many women, was often described as mere help to her famous husband. Despite her being a primary contributor and an inventive force in her own right, her contributions were diminished, reduced to footnotes if even that. It's a heartbreaking pattern we see repeated throughout the history of science and technology. All right, let's talk about some real unsung heroes here. Women whose groundbreaking work was, for far too long, tucked away in the shadows while others basked in the limelight. This isn't just about giving credit where it's due. It's about understanding how systemic biases, the Matilda Effect, have shaped scientific history, often at the expense of brilliant women. First up, we have Rosalind Franklin, a British chemist whose name really should be on the tip of everyone's tongue when we talk about DNA. It was her crucial X-ray diffraction images, including that absolutely famous game-changing Photo 51 in 1952, that proved absolutely essential to determining the double helix structure of deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. You know, the very blueprint of life. Here's the kicker, though. James Watson and Francis Crick, who were working on a similar problem, allegedly used her data without her permission. They then ran with it, published their findings, and went on to receive the 1962 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine alongside Maurice Wilkins. Franklin, her pivotal role was largely and tragically overlooked during her lifetime. She passed away from cancer before the Nobel was awarded, so she never even knew the full story of what transpired. And let me tell you, her work on coal, RNA, and viruses was just as significant, laying groundwork for future Nobel laureates. Then there's Lisa Meitner, an Austrian-Swedish physicist, whose story is frankly one of the most egregious examples of the Matilda Effect you'll ever hear. In 1938, alongside her colleagues Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann, Meitner was instrumental in recognizing that uranium atoms split when bombarded by neutrons. She was the one who provided the fundamental theoretical understanding of nuclear fission. Imagine, a concept so profound it changed the world, leading to nuclear energy and the atomic bomb. Yet, when the 1944 Nobel Prize in Chemistry was awarded for this discovery, Otto Hahn received it alone. The truth is, Hahn himself barely understood the physics of what they'd discovered, relying heavily on Meitner's insights through their correspondence, even after she was forced to flee Nazi Germany. She was nominated for Nobel Prizes an astonishing 48 times, but never received one. A true injustice. It's worth noting, too, that Meitner held strong moral convictions against war and refused to work on the Manhattan Project. And we can't forget Esther Lederberg, a microbiologist whose foundational work in bacterial genetics was absolutely groundbreaking. She developed the replica plating technique, a method that allowed scientists to efficiently replicate bacterial colonies, immensely advancing genetic research. This was a massive step forward, truly. Yet, her contributions were largely credited to her husband, Joshua Lederberg, who, along with George Wells Beadle and Edward Tatum, received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1958. It's a pattern, isn't it? The collaborative work, often with a husband, leads to the man getting the official recognition. It's a real shame, too, because, despite these pivotal discoveries, Esther Lederberg never even held a tenured position. These are just a few of the many stories that, for too long, were buried or distorted. It's why we need to keep digging, keep revealing, and keep telling her story alongside history to ensure these women receive the recognition they always deserved. This systemic lack of recognition, often perpetuated by what some call the great man theory of history, contributes to a very real problem we still face today: the leaky pipeline in STEM fields. Women, seeing their efforts downplayed or unacknowledged, progressively leave these fields, which is a loss not just for them, but for all of us. But here's the thing about true innovation. It doesn't just disappear. Klara Dán von Neumann's work, even if it was relegated to the shadows for decades, has had a lasting and profound impact. She was deeply involved in the development of the Monte Carlo method, a crucial statistical technique used for everything from analyzing large quantities of data to forecasting COVID-19 trends today. She also played a vital role in programming the Mani-1, another early computer, and in testing the design of the hydrogen bomb. Her influence is so fundamental that it's been said every computer program running today is descended from the code she penned more than 70 years ago. And recent historical research continues to uncover even more of her pioneering spirit. It's been discovered that Klara utilized a closed subroutine at least a year earlier than David Wheeler, who is generally credited with its invention. This isn't just a technical detail. It's further proof of her innovative mind, anticipating concepts that would become cornerstones of computer science. You know, even with all the progress we've made, the ugly truth is the Matilda effect is still very much alive and kicking today. We see it clearly in the gender citation gap, where, unfortunately, women's groundbreaking work often gets fewer citations than their male counterparts. And it's glaring in their underrepresentation in highly prestigious awards, and frankly, in leadership positions across STEM fields. It's a persistent challenge, no doubt about it. But here's the thing: this isn't some insurmountable wall, folks. There are some incredibly important and pragmatic efforts underway right now, designed specifically to tackle this head-on. One big push is simply celebrating diversity and inclusion. We're talking about tangible initiatives here, like the L'Oréal UNESCO for Women in Science program, which is all about actively supporting and shining a spotlight on women's contributions to STEM. And you see it with scholarships too, like the Maxis Women in Tech Scholarship, providing real financial aid and crucially increasing their visibility, fostering a more equitable field and inspiring future generations. Beyond celebration, there's a serious movement to push for structural changes within the system itself. Research institutions, for example, are finally getting serious about implementing clear authorship guidelines and really promoting accurate citation practices to ensure everyone gets the credit they deserve. And it's not just about rules, it's about awareness. Tools like the Harvard Implicit Association Test are gaining traction because they're helping us all, and yes, that includes us journalists and academics, to confront our own unconscious biases in how we publish and cite. By dismantling these systemic biases, these efforts support policies that ensure women and other underrepresented groups receive the credit they've earned. And listen, this last one is absolutely critical. Role models in education. It is paramount that we actively make women visible as experts in their fields. We need to see more female scientists, engineers, and tech leaders, not just in the media, but genuinely celebrated in our educational systems. Why? Because, as we always say, you can't be what you can't see. When young girls and women see these trailblazers, it normalizes the idea of women in science and inspires future generations to step up and make their own mark. It's about setting the record straight, giving future generations a fuller, more representative STEM legacy, and helping to inspire a new wave of inclusive innovation. We invite you, our listeners, to be part of this ongoing effort. If you know of other overlooked historical figures who deserve their herstory to be told, send us your mystery suggestions. Participate in our research challenges to help us uncover more untold stories. In the end, recognizing the achievements of women like Klara Dán von Neumann is about far more than just historical fairness. It's about fostering a more inclusive, a more accurate, and a truly reflective future for STEM. When we ignore half the talent, we're not just doing a disservice to individuals, we're limiting our own collective progress. The fight for herstory is ongoing, and it's essential to ensure that talent is recognized, valued, and celebrated, regardless of gender. So I encourage all of you listening, be conscious of the biases that might exist in your own interactions, in the way you read, in the way you work. Contribute to fostering equitable environments, whether you're in academia, in industry, or just in your everyday life. Share this episode, discuss its themes, and let's together promote that vital value of progress through knowledge.
That brings us to the end of another journey into the untold chapters of history. We hope this episode has sparked your intellectual curiosity and your desire to see justice done, correcting historical oversights. Our mission here at Almost Famous is to shed light on those lost heroes and forgotten legends whose immense contributions were, for too long, lost to time. If you're as fascinated by these stories as we are, please subscribe to the Almost Famous Lost Heroes and Forgotten Legends podcast, wherever you're listening. Your subscription helps us unearth more of these crucial narratives and ensures they get the recognition they deserve. We want to hear from you. What almost famous figure do you think deserves more recognition? Leave a comment, a review, or join the conversation and suggest future topics on our main YouTube channel, Almost Famous Lost Heroes and Forgotten Legends, helping us continue this vital work. Join us next time as we delve into another forgotten tale of unknown scientists, lost explorers, overlooked artists, or inventors on Almost Famous. Because remarkable people exist in every era, sometimes they just need someone to tell their story properly. Until then, keep exploring.